Well, hello and welcome to our chillest intro of Industry Exchange. Welcome to the live chat. That was acoustic guitar track that you can find at Jacob Sire Guitar. You go to RAWartists.com for that. And that track was actually called Resonant Box. So if you are wanting some chill music to kind of like have a nice relaxing night, go check out Jacob. That's Jacob Sire, S-E-Y-E-R Guitar. Go check him out on RAWartists.com. So as always, I'm your host, Meghan Jones. Welcome. Today we have with us Mei Pak right here. And she is an artist herself, creating these handmade jewelry under the brand Tiny Hands, which I would share a little tidbit about myself. We were talking earlier about tiny hands, and I said I actually have abnormally sized hands for my size body, and we had to like compare hands, compare hands here. So well, that's a little bit, but yeah. So she's taken that into her jewelry line, and she's the founder of Creative Hive Co as well, and where she helps small businesses, small business owners that are looking to kind of unlock their full potential of what's going on. So. And that latter part is, again, something we're going to be focusing on today, setting up your online business, maximizing sales. So whether you're making clothing or pottery or paintings, whatever the case might be, stay tuned for pointers from this pro right here. So Mei, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to learning more about tiny hands and not just like these tiny hands. But I'm just curious, like, how did you get to where you are now? What's your background? Why did you start selling tiny scented like foot-shaped jewelry?
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you for having me.
Yes.
And to all of you guys at Raw, I'm excited to be here. So I grew up in Malaysia.
Okay.
And to a very, well, I wouldn't say very traditional, but as traditional as Asian families come. And creativity isn't something that was very encouraged or wasn't a thing that people really focused on, but I remember being a very creative kid. Like, I loved looking at DIY books and like 100 things you can do with things around the house, like crafts and stuff like that. But growing up in Malaysia back in the day, it was really hard to find craft supplies. Like, it's not as abundant as they are here. I can
imagine like there's not just a store that...
There's no Michaels, there's no Joann's.
Yeah.
So I couldn't really do anything with those books or with like the interests that I had as a kid. But the first time I did anything creative that wasn't forced on me, like art class in school, was like, I'm not a drawer or a painter by any means, was when I took a jewelry making class with my mom when I was like 15, 16, and we loved it so much, and we were so hooked. And how Tiny Hands started was, I think a lot of people can probably relate to this, but it's like we just loved making things so much, and we made a lot of different things. My mom made but she made like semi-precious stone jewelry like amethyst and jade necklaces and earrings. And I made hand-bound journals because I really loved collecting notebooks, but they're really expensive. So I'm like, I'm just gonna teach myself how to make them. I made some forms of jewelry too, did some polymer clay work, some beaded stuff, and we're like, well, we have so much of it now, let's just start a shop so it has a place to go. So I looked down at my hands one day, I'm like, Mom, let's just call it Tiny Hands because we have tiny hands.
Because these tiny hands are making this jewelry.
Yep.
Yeah. That's amazing. So side note, you guys need to hop over to Instagram right now because that's where you are anyhow. And you need to check out at Tiny Hands Jewelry. You guys need to like it, comment, follow, share in the adventure. So during that process, what 3 things do you wish someone had told you from the start? Because like, obviously if you're coming into it just kind of being like, well, we have all of this product, we should probably get rid of it. But yeah, like what about running an online business, those 3 things, instead of like just learning the hard way?
Yeah, okay, so I think the very first thing was I wish someone would have told me to make my customer, put my customer first. So as I was starting out, I mean, just as I described it, I was just making whatever I enjoyed making, whatever was fun to make. Like, I had golden colored cupcakes with purple frosting, and I'm like, you'd never see that in a store. That would never sell, because that's not what people think of when they think of cupcakes, and they wouldn't buy stuff like that. So I had so many things that I made just because it was cool to make, or like, yes, I had this like weird pudding round shaped thing with like chocolate sauce on it with cocoa on top, but it didn't make any sense. But I was like, yes, I am so proud. I mastered liquid clay. But it meant nothing to anyone else but myself. And so I had a lot of things in the beginning that just didn't sell. And it wasn't until, and mind you, so kind of when my business did start getting more successful and I did start making more sales was when I moved here to America. And even that itself was a little bit challenging for me, coming from an entirely different culture, was I wasn't aware or understanding of what was trending or what Americans loved. And you know, even in America, like New Yorkers love different things and different foods than people out here in the West Coast, and every region has its own thing. And so learning those things, once I knew what those were and I made like corn dog necklaces, snow cone necklaces, then things started to sell because I was making things for people instead of just for me. And of course I did still enjoy the process. So I think there's a fine balance that you can strike there. The second thing is I didn't start, like as you said, Megan, like I did not jump into this knowing anything about business.
Yeah.
But I did start taking like courses and programs and reading books about the business side of things much later into the business than I think would have been helpful. So it wasn't until like maybe 5-6 years in that I'm like, okay, I'm going to start actually learning how to do the business stuff.
Yeah.
And I wish someone would have said to just focus on the business stuff from the very beginning. It would have saved me a lot of time. And then the third thing is kind of on that same note, when I was taking a lot of courses, I was trying a lot of different things. I was taking courses on social media, on blogging, and it wasn't until I landed into doing outreach, like pitching your products to magazines, to stores, that was actually what was, I would say, like the pivotal thing that helped me kind of explode the business.
Interesting.
And if someone had told me like, just don't worry about all the other stuff, just focus on outreach, would have also saved me a lot of time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit of like the PR aspect of
Yes.
things,
Yeah.
like spreading that word of the brand awareness.
Exactly.
So what made you want to form then Creative Hive Co? What kind of brought that? I'm sure like all these little things along the way, but
Yeah. So as I was taking these courses and I was trying all of these different marketing like tactics and tricks for tiny hands, there were some things that I was kind of experimenting on my own. Like, what if I did this? What if I did that? Or maybe I would see like a strategy that a business from a different industry, like maybe a tech industry, I would see them do something that was like, that's really clever. I want to see if I can do that in my handmade jewelry business. So I would experiment with a lot of different things, and whatever worked or didn't work, I wanted to tell other people about it. But I think just from my background, like growing up in Malaysia, coming to America, not really knowing anyone, I kind of had no network, no friends, no people that I could talk to. And the same goes for the business stuff. You know, I built myself a community much later into the business, but in the beginning it was just like me and 4 walls. I don't recommend that. What was I saying?
Yeah,
it was the Creative Hive. Yes, how
yeah.
I started that. So then I started documenting this. I'm like, okay, let's just on the side start writing a blog for these experiments.
Yeah.
And I would do it like once every 6 months. So it wasn't a consistent thing by any means. And then I started noticing like these blog posts are really good, and no one talks about this, but no one's seeing them because I wasn't making it a focus.
Sure.
I wasn't reaching out to people and saying like, hey, come read my blog. So then it wasn't until 2014 that I was like, okay, I'm gonna make this official and I'm gonna start Creative Hive Co.
I love that.
Yeah.
So first off, also at Creative Hive Co is where you can check them out on Instagram. Of course, go to the website creativehiveco.com. Learn more. Sign up for the courses. That's what she's here for, education. So before we move on, I am curious. You mentioned like applying something from a tech industry to your business. I'm just curious, like one quick success with that and one that was a flop. Do you have anything off the top of your head?
At the top of my head, I can think of the one success thing, because this one was kind of controversial. I asked all my friends, like, can I do this? Do you think it'd be a good idea? And they're like, no, it's sleazy. But this turned out to be the best sales day I have ever had. And I do this every Black Friday, Cyber Monday, so just once a year. But I've done this for like the last 4 or 5 years. But basically, there's this website, now I can't remember, Udemy. They're a course website, and I think it was like a Black Friday, and they were doing kind of like, I don't know what the proper term is for this. I call it a ladder discount sale. So at the top of the hour, maybe like, or at the top of the day, like 10 to 12 p.m., they would have like 30% off. And as the day progressed, the longer you wait, the smaller the discount. Oh. So to my friends, that was like, oh, that's kind of like sleazy, kind of spammy. And so like that year when I asked them, they told me not to do it, so I didn't do it. But the year after, I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna try it anyway. And it made me like the first year made me about like $3,000 for that 1 year.
Amazing.
For that one day.
Yeah.
The next year it went up to like 8,000, and then the next year it was like 10,000 for just one day.
Yeah.
That's like, to me, really, really good. A thing that doesn't work. Now that's harder for me. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah,
if I can think
just
about
curious.
it, I'll let you know.
Amazing. So let's discuss that then, the ins and outs of an online store. Definitely something I've never done before. I've never had to like sell a product, so or any sort of item online. So definitely curious about that. What are some of the more popular e-commerce platforms to consider? I know like there's Shopify, right?
Yeah. So think of e-commerce as like 2 different categories. So Shopify is definitely my number 1 recommendation for anyone who, if you want to go into business for yourself long term, and like 10 years from now you still want to be around and making a living selling your handmade products online. It doesn't have to be handmade, but your products online. Shopify is definitely the way to go for a long-term plan. There are pros and cons to all of the recommendations I'm going to make. So Shopify, that's your own website. You're having your own brand. To me, that's kind of akin to me telling you like, just start swimming at the deep end of the pool. So it is harder to get started because you have to get all that traffic yourself. You have to do all of that marketing. And for a lot of artists, that's kind of a skill that doesn't come as second nature.
Sure.
But I think if you just took the time to invest in some education, take the time to learn, it's really not that hard if you know what you're doing. So the other 2 platforms, I'll just introduce them and we'll just talk about them. But marketplace sites, so those are like Etsy and Amazon and eBay. eBay, I don't necessarily recommend people sell art on there unless maybe you are like a collector of vintage things. eBay might be a good place for that. Yeah. But generally, if you're making your own products, Etsy and Amazon are great places to sell on. Okay. So again, like with those pros and cons, Etsy and Amazon both, they're powered by a search engine. And I call them marketplace sites because they have hundreds of thousands of other sellers on the platform along with you. So if anyone were to search handmade jewelry in their search engine, your listing might come up amongst 100,000 other handmade jewelry listings. So the good things about it, or the one really good thing about why you should be on these marketplace sites, is because they have that built-in audience. So you don't have to really do as much of that marketing yourself. An interesting thing that I've noticed, kind of like just a pattern, I like noticing patterns and like just sniffing around, and because success leaves clues.
Wait, you guys, success leaves clues. That's amazing.
Tweet that.
Yes, exactly.
So I've noticed with a lot of Etsy and Amazon shops, when you go to like look at their social media, their Instagram or their Facebook, they tend to not have a lot of big social media followings. And I'm talking specifically, like if you were to look up a top seller on Etsy, they don't usually have a very big audience outside of that. And of course, if you're looking at like the 0.01% of top sellers, they probably do. But the majority of most sellers on there don't. The con is that there's so much competition. It's so easy for a customer to just like look at your listing and then like right down there is someone else's listing to go to someone else's shop. So when you're looking at your own website on Shopify, that you get to control that experience a lot better. Yeah. And keep people in your space a lot longer.
Yeah, controlling that user experience is like, and how they're interacting with your brand, etc. Do you recommend being on both like Etsy and Amazon?
That's a good question.
Okay.
So I recommend, if you're doing this long term, start with Shopify first. Once you've got that figured out, then branch into both Etsy and Amazon. Do both. I like to believe be in as many places as you can. That's going to help you, because the audiences are different there, so you don't have to worry about any overlap.
Yeah, no, that's really true. That's I can tell you that, the same. It's like somebody who has like an Amazon Prime account or something like that is not going to necessarily like be on Etsy for whatever reason.
Right.
I just think like the demographics skews differently. So, so speaking of, like, when you're on those types of sites, like, for instance, I know one thing that I really rely on heavily is pictures, because like obviously you're not getting to, like, there's no other way. And a lot of the things that I actually like too, side note, are the videos that they're doing nowadays. Like even for like a pair of shoes, like the person walking around in them.
I love those.
That's genius.
Yes.
Whoever's doing that, keep it up. But like, so for photographing and like describing the products, that's got to be pretty like key.
Important.
Yeah. So let's dive into that.
Sure. I think if you're ever selling your products in person, it's never a problem for you to sell them, because people can actually see, smell, try them on. When it comes to the online side of things, you don't have any of that. So photos that's where it's at. If you don't have good photos, your chances of making a sale is just way down.
Yeah.
But more than that, I think photos are a great opportunity for you to build trust and confidence with your customer, because like I love buying handbags and I love looking at handmade handbags, but the problem I always encounter when shopping for them online is there are always photos of the outside but not of the inside, and I'm the kind of girl, I need to look at the compartments inside.
Yes. Is it going to fit my phone? Where can I put my
knickknacks,
chapstick?
my lip gloss.
Know.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And I think you can never have too many photos. So that's the first tip I'm going to give you. The second tip is also use your photos as an opportunity for you to kind of build that sex appeal for your product. That's what's going to make people feel like, oh my goodness, I can't sleep. I'm just thinking about buying that handbag and I need to get it. And that's where lifestyle photos come in, of like a model holding your bag or whatever that photo might be. And then there's also that kind of question people have, white photos versus colored photos, like white background photos. I think it's good to have both. White photos are often requested by the media, so if you were to pitch yourself to a magazine, it would be handy to have those on hand. But I think it's not so much white versus colored, it's more whatever you can do to make sure it's consistent with all your other listings, so that when people look at them, they know, okay, this is one shop, and it's not like a garage sale, which is what I used to be a garage sale shop, so I'm not throwing any shade to anyone, but you want to be consistent and cohesive.
Yeah.
And when it comes to product descriptions, I was never a good wordsmith, but I believe it needs to talk about like the features, the size, the dimensions, care instructions, how to use this product. But more than that, also talking about the benefits. So I know some people trip over this. They're like, well, my product doesn't cure cancer. So what can I talk about?
This purse isn't going to cure cancer.
But it is going to boost your confidence and make you feel really sexy.
Yeah.
So it's like talking about the feelings and the emotions that you'll get after you buy the product is really key here. So at Tiny Hands, we talk about how our jewelry makes the perfect gift for people. So it helps make buying gifts easier for people who are shopping for gifts. And it puts a smile on people's face. So it's just a really great gift idea. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's all the way you kind of position it, right? Yeah, you have to kind of get in the mind of the person who's purchasing it. Like, why are they looking at this bag? I'm gonna have to buy a handbag now after this. Why are they looking at this bag? Oh, probably they're looking for, for an occasion or for the everyday. So yeah, really getting into that nitty gritty of like describing it to that one particular person. So when it comes to that sort of thing, and how I was always curious also, like first off, pricing one's work, that's always, they say like time and, what your materials, that sort of a thing. But what about also, second to that, setting shipping rates? Because I know that sometimes isn't necessarily controlled by you. So I don't know how that works.
I think I'll talk about the shipping first. make it easy for customers to buy from you. And a big reason most people don't buy online, besides trust, is shipping rates. They're like sticker shock. You know, they like something, put it in their cart, they go to checkout, and it's like the shipping is as expensive as the product itself, and it really turns people away. So whenever you can, 2 things I recommend: see what you can do to charge flat rate shipping. USPS does have flat rate priority boxes. You can stuff as many things as you want. If it fits, it ships.
Another thing you can tweet out.
No, I think I got that from USPS. I've just been doing this for a long time.
I mean, perhaps, but also.
Yeah. So try to do flat rate shipping, and then if you can, try to do free shipping. And if you can, try to combine those 2 things. That might involve you absorbing some of that shipping cost yourself. So it might seem like your product price might be a little bit more, but really it doesn't, like, to the customer psychologically, they would actually rather pay more for a product price if it meant the shipping was less. It's like, there's something about the shipping price that makes people be like, you know,
well, it's like you have already seen this thing, you've fallen in love with it, you've already sort of vacillated over spending that money.
Exactly.
So, okay, I'm now come to the point where I'm comfortable spending that $62, but that extra $15, like, and that's just like like something afterwards where it's like, oh, and like this unforeseen,
right, that they weren't expecting. Yeah,
interesting. So what do you recommend then, as far as, I guess because of that, recommended for pricing your products?
Pricing products, okay. So when it comes to pricing your products, I generally work off of a formula. So taking all your materials, your supplies, the time it takes you to make your product, and then multiplying that by 2, and then you get your wholesale price, and then from the wholesale price you multiply that by 2 again to get your retail price. So I think a mistake that a lot of people make is they think that they're getting paid by just their labor, and so they try to make their labor, like the time it takes to make the product, they try to make that something kind of high, because you should, right? But remind yourself that based off the formula, you're actually getting paid in 2 ways.
Twice.
The labor time that it took you to make the product, but also the little cushions in there. When you multiply it by 2 twice, you're getting that money back too. And that's, to me, the first time you're getting paid is as the, I guess, how would you call it, as the manufacturer, as the artist. But then the other time you're getting paid is as a business. That pays for your marketing, that pays the time you're taking to build your site, taking product photos. So when you actually do the math, you actually do get paid quite a bit if you follow that formula. So you can actually, for your labor costs, make that a little bit lower, somewhere along the minimum wage range, just to make your prices more affordable that way. And then if you need to add in the shipping costs there, before you multiply or after you multiply by 2. It's kind of an art and a science.
And like, I guess, like, right, like it's going to be dependent on
the product itself, what the market can bear. That's where the art side comes in.
So obviously, just before we move on, first off, thank you for asking those questions out there, you guys. Remember to hashtag industry exchange for all those things. Tips for international shipping. Anything there?
A lot of people, when they look into international shipping, they think about DHL or UPS or FedEx, and I have found that USPS is still the best bet. For most major countries, first class international does give you tracking, and it is going to be a lot cheaper up to a certain weight. If you sell something heavy, then you might want to start looking into DHL or FedEx or UPS, but shop around. Again, priority flat rate boxes, those are just a really good value. Shout out to the US Postal Service. Thanks you guys for asking those questions. Keep them coming if you have any more. We're going to talk about how to improve the chances of your items appearing in searches. We talked about those sort of marketplaces where it could potentially be a little bit crowded, where your really great photos are going to help you stand out.
But yeah, how do you improve the chances of coming up in those types of things?
So when it comes to search engine optimization, which is how, like, the whole act of ranking better in search, there are kind of two parts to it, and most people forget that it's a two-part process. Most people are very familiar with doing on-site SEO, which is like making sure their keywords are in the titles, and the tags, descriptions, things like that, making sure there are alt tags in your pictures, because Google can't read pictures, but they can read text that you associate with the pictures. The second part of how to make SEO work for you and how to get your products ranking on Google or even on Etsy or on Amazon is the off-site SEO, which is getting backlinks. Because think about it, right? How you're in a sea of competition of a lot of people who sell the same things as you. How do you tell Google to rank you over someone else?
Right.
And it's through backlinks. So the more backlinks you have, the more that Google is going to rank you better, and the more backlinks you have from authoritative websites. Like if you can for some reason get your site on a .gov website, that's going to be a lot more powerful and have a lot more weight at ranking you better in Google. So to me, backlinks is the same thing as doing outreach, like getting yourself in blogs and magazines and other people's social media, get people talking about you.
So for the layperson out there, backlinks, explaining what that is.
Yes.
So like if you are doing that outreach where you get written up in Vogue magazine, that article is going to then link back to your website.
Right. It's literally just a link to your shop on someone else's website.
Yeah. And that's a really great, I mean, right, it's kind of like, again, that sort of word of mouth, right? The more areas it can kind of be in, the better.
Yes.
Okay, so helping with that. So how do you reach a publication like Vogue? Interesting.
Yes, the easiest way is to just find, so whatever product you make, it could fit in different segments, right? Different parts of the magazine. So if you make jewelry, you're probably going to reach out to the jewelry editor, the accessories editor. So find out who that editor is, and then find their email address. You could probably find it through Google, maybe LinkedIn. Usually that's how it is found.
Twitter is actually where a lot of writers are.
Yes.
Twitter.
And then send them an email pitch. And then make the pitch about them. So like, how can my jewelry help you with your job? And when you approach it from that standpoint, the chances of you actually getting your email opened and responded to increases.
Yeah, I would say make sure you do your research on that writer too, specifically, because they get pitched
a lot.
And honestly, it's all about the follow-up. Like that the chances of that email getting answered on the first time, probably slim to none. So it's all about the follow-up, being diligent.
I always say the magic is in the follow-up.
Yeah, very much so. Cool. So I guess what more can artists do to reach potential customers and sell more products? What are more of those things?
I think these days, because it is so competitive, it's so easy for anyone to just set up a shop online.
Right.
What you want to do is take a holistic approach. And that means not just doing just Instagram or just Facebook or just email marketing, but kind of doing all the things as well as you can and going from there. So an example would be definitely to start doing email marketing. A lot of people still haven't gotten on board with that yet, but it's so powerful because that can be your in-house salesperson that makes sales for you while you sleep. Because especially if you take advantage of autoresponders within email marketing software like MailChimp or MailerLite or Klaviyo. So have email marketing set up, make sure your site is converting well, at least at a 1% conversion rate. So if you have 100 people coming to your site, you can expect 1 sale. So if it's performing any worse than that, then you're doing all this marketing, people are gonna come to your site and you're gonna leak sales, and that's a problem as well. So your site, make sure it's good, make sure you got those photos up, your descriptions are good, the checkout process is seamless, your site loads quickly. If you're on Shopify, a lot of these things won't be a problem for you. And then also doing pitching, doing a lot of that outreach, because it's like you're having a party, but then you're not inviting anyone to it, right? Like if you want a party, you want a good party,
right?
You have to actually take the time to send out those invites and to talk to people on Facebook, like, hey, I got a party at this time, this date, come over. So once you have like that kind of holistic approach, everything's working in tandem, that's when the sales start pouring in.
That's when they're going to start to sort of roll in. I feel like we have another question from the audience here. How important are reviews? How do you get them when starting? Interesting, yeah.
Very important, because as I mentioned, like shopping online can be like the wild, wild west.
Sure.
And it is very important to build that confidence with your buyers, especially if they don't know you, right? A lot of people that are starting out, they make a lot of their first sales to friends and family, but then the next question is, how do I start selling to strangers? And reviews really does add that social proof on there. If you're just starting out, well, just first I want to lay the expectation that it does take time to grow reviews, so don't be so hard on yourself. And then one thing you can try is to actually offer your products, send them out to influencers, to bloggers, and have them talk about your products.
So do you recommend like following up with people? And I guess that's part of the email marketing process as well, right? Also, get a mailing list, y'all. Like those are still super important. But yeah, I guess just sort of like following up, being like, hey, will you rate and review?
Exactly, like having an autoresponder email that goes out to anyone who's made a purchase in the past, could be your family and friends, and say, hey, please leave a review. It's really important to us. Yeah.
So again, it's all about the follow-up. It's not just there's all those, your work is never done, is basically what we're saying. It's basically what we're saying. So, well, unfortunately, that's all the time that we have, because I want to learn so much more about this for the shop that I'm never going to set up. But a huge thank you today to our guest for sharing her knowledge. Mei, it was wonderful very much to speak with you. Of course, check her out, the founder of Creative Hive Co. She's got some workshops and things and can really, I think, advise you on some of these questions that you have that were coming through today, which were great. Again, my name is Meghan Jones. We will be back on March 31st to speak with a fashion designer. So all you fashionistas and fashionistas, be sure to be back here next month. And of course, follow along on our journey at RAWartists for updates. And you guys, I appreciate you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next month.